The Fujicast is an independent loading zone production.
Kev, how's the doorstep challenge coming along there? I know you're doing a few more after we've spoken. It's never ending. Yeah, for the man that didn't want to do portraits, you're doing portraits and group shots.
Yeah, group shots. One of the people were meant to be getting married, and obviously their wedding was cancelled. So they said, "Oh, can you come and do doorstep shots of us, and we'll put our wedding." So she was in her wedding dress and everything. So I felt quite nice about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is as usual. As soon as we stopped, and we did the first batch, and then as soon as we stopped, everybody went, "Oh, hang on, what about us?" And so I've got another session, another couple of hours driving around Malmesbury and doing some more. I think that'll be it then. But yeah, has
it released your inner portrait man at all?
No, not at all. But it does. I honestly think some of the images are beautiful. You know, people stood out. It's literally, and I've insisted that people stand on their doorstep. Some people are like, "Oh, can we go and stand under that nice tree and stuff?" And I'm like, "Nope, it's doorsteps." The whole point is that when you look back at these, we'll remember the windows and what you have, flower pots and stuff like that. That's the whole point. So I've been quite insistent on that. And some of them I think are really lovely pictures, I have to say. And and even though they're my own pictures, but I think when people look back at them in years to come, they'll remember quite a lot of stuff.
Kev, there's a whole new industry here.
The Fujicast.
You've become a portrait photographer overnight. Well, I'm glad it's going well. Have you moved back into the office yet, by the way, as well? You clearly haven't. Or you could have done, because we could be speaking from your office now.
I keep threatening. Gemma keeps threatening to throw me out. I keep threatening to go, and then both of us are like, "Oh no, don't go."
No, I know. Well, if you move out and down to the office, you won't be able to do so much of this in the afternoon, will you? Another one, darling. Gin and tonic. Don't mind if I do.
Well, the whole point of me going back to the office really is so I can crack on with some YouTube stuff. But then I realised, actually, I can't, because all my equipment, my lighting, my tripods, all of that stuff
is in the church.
So
you gave it to the church. Oh, Kev.
I could do my YouTube videos from the altar, perhaps.
Yeah, maybe. I'm not quite so sure. I think there'll be a raised eyebrow further than even a Mullins one if you started doing that. Anyway, welcome to the Fujicast. Once daily, now weekly. I'll stop saying that. We don't need to say that all the time, but a couple of times I wanted to do it. So welcome. Here we are. Week 2 of, I suppose, of being still roughly in lockdown. And Kev still isn't here. Kev, where are you?
I'm here. I'm by here.
Oh, no.
Over by here.
I know. So we'll have your questions as always. Thank you for emailing them in, and keep doing it. It's going to be really important. Now I want to build up that bank of questions, and at some stage, talking to YouTube, we have of course the YouTube channel for the Fujicast, which is sort of underutilized at the moment, Kev, isn't it? But we did actually record a couple of Talking Heads one before lockdown started, and we're going to do some more visual stuff on that channel. So we need your questions. Send them in to click@fujicast.co.uk. Great guest today, Kev.
Who is it?
I love your enthusiasm. Palle Schultz.
Palle, my mate Palle.
Yes.
Love Palle.
And
he's the 100-year-old man that looks about 6.
Well, yeah. Well, wait for the interview. Well, you've given it away, sort of, but that's okay. When I asked Kev yesterday, I said, Kev, have you got any advice for any questions? Because Palle keeps himself pretty much cards close to his chest, doesn't he? If you look online, there's not an awful lot about him, is there? Usually with photographers, you find a whole loads of stuff, reams, but not so much with him. And so I asked Kev, I said, Kev, what can you tell me about, you know him, what can you tell me about Palle? And he said, just, what did he say? Just ask him why he looks 25 and the rest of us look much older.
I said, ask him about his rock star status when he was a musician.
That's right.
How come he's so good at karate, and why does he look 25 when he's 60?
Well, we sort of got on to martial arts. We didn't talk an awful lot about martial arts, but there we go.
He is one of those people that he's so nice, such a nice guy.
Yeah,
and
he was, really nice.
In a past life, I would imagine him to have been a 007 or spy.
You have everybody down as a member of the CIA or MI5 or I don't know, MFI. Anyway, look, let's go for the questions. You go first.
Okay, I've got one from Matthias Fox.
Friend of the show now, isn't he? He's written in a few times.
I think so, yeah. Hi, guys. I hope you've recovered well from the marathon of daily Fujicasts. Have you recovered, do you think, Neil?
Yeah, I think so. Well, it's not changed for me because I'm back on dailies, aren't I, doing the photography.
True.
Photography daily. It's not changed, Kev. The only thing is you're not there with your beer.
His question is quite a weird one. Not everybody is photogenic, in my experience. How do you deal with wedding clients that may not be very pleasing to look at? Often those normal-looking people are very nice and, of course, deserve the best photos possible.
Yes.
Maybe it's just my lack of experience, but I would struggle to achieve good results in such circumstances. Best regards. Stay safe, Matt.
You've got to be so careful because, I know of photographers in the past that have, we know of one that actually did not take commissions from people that he did not deem attractive enough. I'm sorry, sir, you're just not good looking enough.
Don't be rude.
But, what would it feel like to say that to somebody?
Do you know what? It never crosses my mind, I have to say. I never kind of shoot a wedding, especially a wedding, and think, this could have been so much better had they been, more pleasing to look at or a certain size or anything. It literally never crosses my mind. I think if it's a good wedding, I think this is going to look great on the blog, regardless. It just doesn't, it's not a thing.
Well, if you're shooting because you want everybody to be some sort of supermodel in life, how morally, ethically shallow are you? Yeah,
I suppose it's slightly different, I guess, for portraits and stuff. And Matthias doesn't really kind of, I'm not sure if he's shooting weddings or not, but, he asks us, how do we deal with wedding clients? But, you do, of course, there's some basic stuff that you try and implement. So, for example, if it's a larger person, typically you're not going to go down on your knees and shoot wide-angled upwards. You are going to take things like that into consideration. It's not. I'm a big believer in the camera doesn't lie, and I have this conversation with many people, mostly friends, who don't take a picture of me. I don't like the way I look. I'm like, well, don't blame the camera for the way you look. Blame yourself.
Kev,
sort yourself out.
Have you ever thought about going into counselling?
Well, it's true, isn't it? And actually, there's nothing wrong with the way they look at all. It's their own insecurities. But the
intimation,
there'll be no pictures of you to look at. Think about that.
Well, that's true. You've said that before. I always say to people, it's usually a relative, isn't it? Who'll say, "Don't take any pictures of me." That phrase that you were talking about. It's usually, I don't know, sorry, it's usually mum or somebody like that. Don't shoot me, I'm only the message deliverer on that one, but and it is, isn't it? I always find myself having this conversation which goes along the lines of, look, these are a documentary of the day. This is to tell the story of who was here. We're not doing a fashion shoot. You look lovely as you are, but try and sort of diffuse that and head it off at the past before the day even starts.
Yeah, I suppose we're kind of answering a separate question really to what Matt was kind of implying, I think. But honestly, it never crosses my mind. I never think this is an unphotogenic person.
Yeah. I
really don't. How could I look myself in the face and think that looking in a mirror? It's not something that ever comes. There are people, you're right, there are people who purposely choose what to show on their website and choose who they're going to shoot, etc. And that's up to them, of course. But no, it's not. Honestly, nothing. Doesn't really come into my mind.
Just with a big smile, Matthias, just say, hey, we're just, this is just a document of the day. It shows you were here and you were important. Oh, am I?
I never give them a big smile, mind, because of my big yellow gappy teeth.
No, well, you only have 35 a month as well, as we've identified. But good luck. Suzanne Eves. Hi, Neil. Hi, Kev. Good to have you back after your daily adventure on the weekday show, though I have to admit, we're missing you a little at breakfast each morning here in Frisco. Do you know where Frisco is, Kev?
Well, it's either San Francisco or it's the other Frisco, which I think is also in California. It's Frisco. No, is it San Francisco?
No, this is Frisco. It's a place called Frisco, which is, I had to look it up to be fair. It's close to Dallas, well, north of. I don't know, when you look on an American map, you might say it's just north of, and it could probably be about... Kev, we'll chop that bit out, otherwise we'll have to start paying rights on it.
I don't think it's so just remotely close to that.
Probably not. But Dallas, when you look at a map, it's just a bit like when you go to South Africa, isn't it, where somebody says, drive 3 hours and turn left. Everything looks a lot closer on a map than it really is. So Frisco could actually be, 300 miles up the road. Anyway, photo question, and something to tell you both. Every time you mention going to the Hop to look for Fuji gear, we think of you guys having the original buttermilk stack, which is our favourite, with stuffed French toast on the side and a full-on 3-scooper ice cream sundae. But it appears that your Hop is our IHOP. It's the house.
Two very different things.
The house of pancakes, and you have the house of photography. I went to the IHOP, Kev, actually in Daytona. And the look I asked to hold the pancakes on it, and the look I got was, "What? Are you serious? You want a breakfast without a pancake? Have a coffee? No, not unless you have a pancake." Do you think Andreas may consider having a pancake franchise alongside the GFX range?
I remember going one to one. I'm not sure if it was an IHOP, but it was certainly some kind of pancake restaurant. And I had this pancake, and they put this big dollop of what I assumed was ice cream on it. So I love ice cream. I've got my big spoon, and I just sucked it all up.
Oh no.
It was butter.
Oh dear. That reminds me, funny, I was slightly off. We'll come back to your question in a minute, Suzanne, but it reminds me a little bit actually of going for sushi, a local sushi joint that we have here just in Newbury. It's a lovely little place, tiny place. You only get about 12 diners in it, and they served up, the sushi came out, and on the side, and they do have avocado in some of their sushis, but on the side they had these nicely swirled, really well done, quite large sort of swirls of what I thought was avocado. It was, what's it called? Was that wasabi?
Oh, wasabi.
Wasabi.
Oh, yeah. You don't want to scoop too much of that in your mouth.
I did. I scooped them all up at the same time. I thought it was like avocado. It's like on fire.
There goes your head.
God, dear. I was like, can somebody help me, please? Anyway, question. I'm just starting out in maternity and newborn work, and I've been working with an ancient Canon 5D2 for a few years, a hand-me-down from a friend who'd been using it for news shooting. It is great, but I want to go mirrorless on a not tiny budget, but a considered one. Any suggestions for a good setup, both lens and camera, from the Fujifilm or Fuji range? I always say Fujifilm because I know it's supposed to say Fujifilm. So you have to get in that habit as well, Suzanne. Fujifilm.
I remember once I got an email from the powers that be saying, we're encouraging people not to use the term Fuji because that's not our brand. It's Fujifilm. And we'd really appreciate it if you went through your 700 blog posts on F16 and changed everything.
Did you?
I was like, no, I didn't. I think it was a bit tongue-in-cheek, but the implication was there.
Oh God, yeah.
So going back to the question from Suzanne, I guess you're looking at, it depends on the budget, of course, but probably a more versatile camera such as the XT3 or 4 now.
Yeah.
If you want to go kind of standard one lens type zoomy type things, 1655 would be good.
Yeah, I went for the 1835.
1835. The only thing I can think, if it's maternity and maternity, you're often the types of image, and unless you're into the kind of lovely natural light ones by windows and stuff, but sometimes it's more moody dark rooms. True.
So that 1635 is a much. It's what is it? F28.
28. Yeah. I'd probably go along that route, and of course, if you don't really need, I'm not saying maternity photography isn't important, but it's probably less important that you have a double card slot than perhaps shooting weddings as redundancy. So maybe an XT30 even, that'd be even cheaper. Yeah. It's exactly the same sensor, exactly the same functionality. Just not weather sealed and doesn't have a dual card slot and a few other bits and pieces.
What about a couple of fixed lenses as well? Maybe a 23, which is a nice focal length for a few easier portraits, and 56 maybe, which is going to let, if you're talking about a low light level in these rooms, that 56, lovely long portrait of mum nursing baby or something.
Or the 50 f2 and I'd probably say for maternity 23 is more documentary style, candid type shots. So maybe the 50 f2, even maybe the 35 f2 or 1.4. So something like that really. does depend exactly on what you want to shoot. But I always think that if you're new to a brand, regardless what brand it is, but if you're new to the brand, go for a kind of bog standard, well respected zoom lens that's going to cover all your bases, rather than just get a 23mm and then think, actually I need wider or longer, and then you can always migrate to those later.
Good suggestions, and good luck getting the kit, Suzanne. Yours.
Okay, right, I have another one. This one is from Andrew, friend, FFOTS and cycling proficiency badge.
FFOTS.
Fujicast friend of the show.
Fujicast friend of the show. Oh, I see.
And cycling proficiency badge. Andrew.
Cycling proficiency. Well, you can't get higher accolades than that, can you?
He goes, firstly, thank you for bestowing FFOTS title on me. And he says, surely that's the Blue Peter badge of photography. Andrew says, I was interested to hear Kev's views on photo books and book collecting. Although I'm very pleased to have some signed editions in my collection, I've never had them signed with a view to the value increasing. For me, books are special memories and meeting the photographer, and I always get them dedicated to me if offered. And then it makes them mine. Although I may have a few books which are now worth a few thousand.
What?
Ooh, good for you. That's entirely coincidental, as the books are for me, never intended to sell. So a first edition signed book, which I buy at a photographer's talk for 30 quid, may in time be worth £1,000 to somebody else.
Oh, my word.
I tend to think I've saved myself £970 rather than banked it. Yeah. Is this why you keep a lookout for first editions, Kev? Yeah. Or is it purely for the joy of collecting?
Wow.
Very good points, actually.
I mean, you've always said that they're like bricks and mortar, haven't you?
Yeah, I think we did say when we discussed a lot of books over the lockdown that books for me are something that will go up in value, but also it's more important that they get looked at and read and things like that. So they are... there's a difference. You've got to use the word collector here. I think that it's a little bit like a stamp collector, of which I was one of them for many years too.
Were you?
I was a very good philatelist.
Don't be rude.
I was in the
make you go blind. Some people were very, very serious about it, weren't they?
Used to write letters to each other.
Yeah. Did you? That's nice.
Yeah. Anyway, so collectors. There's a thing. Like collecting is like collecting in itself as an ambition of creating a body of things, a collection, is separate to actually just enjoying something, I think, and using it for what it's for. So a philatelist collects stamps, doesn't post those stamps, keeps those stamps to look at and perhaps sell or whatever in the trade. A book collector depends on if you're collecting them because you just want to look at them and read them, and then when you're done with them you give them away or you throw them out or whatever, or you collect them because you're interested in keeping them for the future. So I think I'm a bit of both. I do definitely want my books to be read and looked at and loved. However, I do have a handful that very rarely get out of their cellophane. I've got some in cardboard boxes. I'm like, I don't know. They're not books I would necessarily get out and look at on a daily basis.
Oh, Kev, don't keep them in cardboard boxes.
Not cardboard. They're not cardboard boxes. They're in the hardback boxes.
Oh, I see. I just recall my mum throwing a load of stuff out that I collected. I used to collect badges, little pin badges, and I put them all in boxes and stuff. And Mum threw all the boxes out one day into Uncle Biffa. Gone.
Yeah, no. I know. So
the ones you've got boxed are obviously the really, really prized ones.
Secret ones.
Oh.
I think you have to look at it as in they will go up in value, but you at the same time just look at them, enjoy them. Sometimes I have been known to buy 2 copies if they're first editions and they're relatively rare, and I think they're going to be worth something in the future. I might buy 2. One to pour over and get my meaty grips on.
Yeah, let Git bite and all that sort of stuff.
Git bite, which he did do to one of them.
Oh my God.
And the other one to keep safe and secure.
Yeah. Have you got one that you feel is particularly precious to you? Not in terms of money, but which is the book?
I don't know. It's really hard to say, but I really like the Darcy Padilla book. That's the one that I always think.
Yeah, you mentioned this
has
one
the
a lot.
most impact.
Yes,
the one with the impact. And that's not particularly. I think it's hard to get hold of, but I don't think it's particularly worth that much money. Yeah. But I do enjoy it, I must admit, and it's one for it's not necessarily. I certainly don't expect to be putting them on eBay at any point, but one day I'll hand them to Albie maybe, and he can put them on eBay for me.
Albie, don't. I've been asking a question of photographers of late, and this kind of fits into the book, talking about the books. I didn't want it to sound so trite or crass that it would be a "what's your favourite picture?" Question, and I certainly wouldn't ask it like that. But I've been asking photographers if there is a particular picture, one that means so much to you, that either shaped the way you feel about photography. I know this is slightly different to you and myself, because we come to photography a little bit later, as a sort of second part of our careers. But is there a picture like that for you, or maybe it's that Darcy Padilla book, because it's stuffed with pictures like that?
Well, in terms of pictures, there's one picture I remember, and I always show this when I do my workshops. It's one of the very first pictures I took with the original X100 of the kids in the garden, and they look like a pair of, well, they look like they've been dragged through a hedge backwards. You know, I've come back from somewhere, they've been in the garden. Yeah. Albie's still in nappies.
Oh, wow.
And he's got his hands where little boys shouldn't put their hands.
Right, yeah.
And Rosa's in this dress that's drenched with water and covered in ice cream, and her hair's all over the place.
Did you actually look after your kids?
I love it. I absolutely adore that picture. Yeah. And it's one of the first pictures I took with the X100. And it was actually, I always say that picture really was the one that made me think, mirrorless is the way forward for me. Because I remember seeing it in the viewfinder and thinking, that's great. And of course, I've been shooting my Canons for years at that point. Yes. But that was the one that I thought, this idea of documenting everyday life is real. Never ever had that thought process with my Canon system, ever.
Funnily enough, you should mention that. When we come back in the second part, then I want to talk about your experiences with your new, shiny, brand new X100V. At last, one of us has got one.
Yeah.
Can I just mention this before we go to today's interview? This came from Neil Ford, and for those that have been in the Fujicast at 4 group, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Fujicast at 4, by the way, it was originally Kev's grand idea to go outside and take a picture of the first thing you see at exactly 4 o'clock each day. And it became stretched to between 4 and 5, which seemed a little bit more plausible, didn't it? And so we have there's a sort of breakaway group, if you like, called Fujicast at 4. It's a Facebook group. And Neil Ford he's very much at Smudgy Pixels, as is also known. Is very much in charge of the whole thing, really. And so we were all in there the other day, obviously, sending a bit of love your way, Neil. So hopefully you'll understand what that means. But also, he sent me a little missive here to remind us that Wednesday, 1st of July, that isn't so far away. That'll be 150 days since we started doing it. So if you haven't taken part yet, you need to get into Fujicast at 4 and start to take part in that. I think very much. I'm going to put you down in it would be very much appreciated pile, which is just behind me on the left. Right, it's time for this week's interview. If you are new to the Fujicast, we always have a kind of sandwich style of show. It starts and ends with your questions about photography and, of course, about kit now and then. And in the middle, we have the interview. And this week, it's with Fujifilm Nordic X-Photographer Palle Schultz. I feel sure that if you've ever wanted to find out some info about a Fujifilm camera or lens, and you've turned to YouTube, you've probably bumped into Palle in one of his super smooth, calm, warm videos. He is a wealth of knowledge, knows his stuff about the kit we use, and we'll put the links, of course, to his work in the show notes today. And as you'll find out, he has a multitude of life skills that have all led him to becoming a quiet powerhouse of European photography. Palle Schultz. Palle, I was speaking to Kevin earlier today about us talking, and I know you spent a bit of time together, so I asked him, I said, Kev, I'm talking to Palle later, and I have to say, for such a multi-talented chap, a photographer, a filmmaker, a musician, a martial artist, I said to Kev that you seem to play your cards pretty close to your chest. So I asked him for a little background, and Kev said to me, this is all he said to me, he said, oh, you don't need that, you can figure it all out. Just ask him why he only looks like he's 25 when he's much older than us.
Wow, man, wow, okay, holy shit. That's amazing.
That's the worst way I've probably ever started an interview, because you're actually not that much older than me at all. But you do still look like you're only 25.
I'm not sure about that.
So it's either a really good skin regime or there's something in Danish water that you lot are not telling us about.
I think when I was 25, I looked like a 12-year-old, so I'm just a little bit behind.
Well, it's lovely to talk to you. I've been talking a bit of late with photographers about the imagery, or the single picture in most cases, that that shaped their view of photography. And with you, I'm not so sure it's a still image, but I think it's going to be a film, because I read the piece about Stanley Kubrick that you watched 2001: A Space Odyssey, and that's what started it for you. And I wondered what it was. It's a film I love. It's a special event film for me. I can't watch it too many times because it would spoil it. But what is it about that film?
It's so slow, and thanks for having me, by the way. The Stanley Kubrick Space Odyssey, I saw that one when I was 9 years old. Yeah. I was pretty much a loner when I was a kid, so I went to the cinema by myself because none of my friends had any interest in a film like that. But I was just blown away. And it's a very long movie, and I was there on my own in our very small town's small theater. So I was just completely blown away by this imagery. And since I was 4, I saw the moon landings when I was 4 years old, and I remember it as if it was yesterday.
Really? Still?
Yeah. I saw it live. My parents allowed me to sit up at night and watch the whole thing. When I saw this movie, it was just like a bit of the same thing, but taken to the future and just seeing it in an incredible resolution and this extremely weird story that ends up in this quantum sort of universe it just blew my mind. And the imagery especially, because Kubrick has always been a favorite of mine, because he has this... he has a very particular way of using lenses and widescreen stuff. Everything is just like still within his frames, and then stuff moves around as if it was a theatre. He was,
of course, an extraordinary powerhouse in cinema, and then you've got films like The Shining.
Yeah, The Shining, yeah.
Because he's an inventive man, obviously, and I'm sure it was The Shining where Steadicam comes from, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I think the way that you move a camera, other people obviously saw this thing and wanted to duplicate it and replicate it. So he was originally a photographer, a stills photographer, and you can definitely see it in the way he chooses to frame his settings. He has a great sense of aesthetic, I think.
We stayed in a hotel, actually, myself and Kev, funnily enough, in Switzerland just before Corona, and it was I likened the corridors within the hotel, which was on a beautiful lake, very much to the Shining. And I said, all it's going to take is 2 children to walk along here holding hands, and I'm jumping into bed with you tonight, Kevin. And but that was where he created, because he couldn't use a dolly, could he? He couldn't use a track, rather. That's where the bed spring idea came to the fore with the original.
I think it was in the maze where you follow him through the maze. That's the problem, because you couldn't leave tracks. And you couldn't lay out tracks, because then you would see it in the snow. Yeah. So they had to make some sort of gizmo that could bypass that necessity. Yeah. Inside the hotel, of course, it's different. Yeah. Then you can just use wheels. Well, I'm not sure how if he used Steadicam for the whole thing. I don't know.
We could end up talking about Stanley Kubrick for quite a while, so we probably should move on. But do you think films like this? I'm sure they must have inspired your own videos on, say, YouTube, where again, it's a quiet approach, and you're much more considered than pretty much everybody else I can think of on the platform, bar maybe a few. Is it the inspirations like 2001 in mind?
I'm not sure. I think it's a combination of mindset and also that I like the very visionary slow movies that takes time to sort of get it in, get the visuals in. Yeah. Blade Runner is one of my favorites, 1984, and also the new one I like because they sort of leaped out from the same place. And I just like to, there's enough that's too fast. I mean, cutting is so fast today, and it's when you see some action movies, just everything is so fast. I'm not sure we need fast all the time. So I sort of like just, dwell, and I don't know, it might be because I'm old, but I just like to sort of have the time to see what's going on in the frame. So I guess that's my inspiration.
I think it's a pace that just it's wonderful to watch. We'll get back to your filming soon, but I want to know where photographically it all started for you. How you knew you were destined to make photography your career.
I don't know if I ever knew. It's more my whole life has been a long series of coincidences, and I had two interests when I was young. I started taking pictures when I was 7 years old with a box camera. It was an Agfa Box 5, I think it's called, with the 120 film.
All right.
And my father was an avid, he took a lot of pictures of the family. And that was sort of a thing in my family. People really remembered to take pictures. So pictures was a natural. So we were given an old box camera that was like 20 years old when I got it in my hands. So I just used it. And then I used whatever fell in my hands and learned to develop film. And so at school, and it was just a natural thing I used for other purposes. It was not like photography itself. It was just taking pictures for other purposes, for reports and stuff in school as well. And then I had an interest in music, a keen interest in music. And I went more along the way of music for many years. And then because a lot of people couldn't, when I did some stuff where we needed pictures, I was the only one who could figure out how to use a camera because I'd done it always. So I just, okay, let me do it then. And it sort of developed from there. But I think it's about 20 years ago when I went on to the bandwagon of actually taking it a bit more seriously. And then that's when we started with digital cameras. And I had no problem figuring those out because I knew that it was lighting more than anything else. So doing all the product photography for where I worked and so was not a problem for me. So I just did it because I was the only one who could figure it out for some reason. You've always
been a very multifaceted photographer. You've you've not necessarily specialised in one area.
It's a nice way to put it.
Yeah.
I just thought I had no aim at all, or just all over the place and completely confused.
No, I'm going to say eclectic.
Okay, I'll buy that. Yeah, there's some people who are very, very good at sticking to a certain style, but I've done so very different tasks that needed a certain look for the task itself that I never really got into creating my own look. I think my color grading maybe gave me some sort of a look, but I do so many different things. What I enjoy the most is portrait photography, taking pictures of people, getting really close to them. And then the rest is more like, it sort of happens. But the portrait photography is what drives me the most.
Actually, your latest project is the Strength and Integrity project.
I'm still trying to get that on the roll because it needs to be printed and put in a book. So that's what I need to do. But I have so much work that I'm sort of pushing it, but I need to finish that at some point.
You talk in your bio about how even banal pictures fascinate you, and of course we're emerging from this lockdown in most countries. I'm not quite sure, how stringent have you been in Denmark?
I don't think it's as bad as US and England.
Okay.
We could always go out and we could more or less visit friends, but people here were really careful anyway.
Yeah.
So it didn't spread much. We have very few incidents of corona. It's like ridiculously little. So now we are gradually opening up again. But of course, it gave us a break to breathe. And I think that was actually pretty healthy, that we got out of the busy routines and sort of put the pace down to where I am.
It suited you very well. The banality that you talk about, though, the taps tripping, the clocks ticking, those kind of what I would now loosely labelling sort of lockdown pictures. What did you find yourself doing and photographing in that time?
For me, it was emotion mostly, because you can become overwhelmed with loneliness if you don't have a family. And I live by myself. And my son lives in another part of the country, so I was pretty much left on my own. And I mean, I have always been driven by emotion, so I sort of, connect to what I feel as the first thing, and then I pick up the camera and I adjust it to whatever mood I'm in, and that can be sometimes color, and sometimes really dark black and white if I'm really moody, and I sort of just try to. You could take the most banal picture in the world, and it was still ooze of whatever emotion you had when you took it. So that's interesting. I think if I were to look through your portfolio, I'd be able to tell your mood and where your mind is by the color grading and the darkness. Then yeah, that's pretty much the truth.
You're very into the formative stages of people's careers. I mean, you mentioned that you photograph dancers and artists and fighters even, but those who require photographic record and don't, say, have the budget for it, that's the kind of person you're drawn to. What inspires you to give your time and expertise to those people?
I come from the same place. I never have had a lot of money. So when I meet people who have talent but are struggling because of money, I don't think that should be a thing that should hold them back. So I just step in and say, you know what, I can help you with this part of what you're doing. And then I just do it. And I just take the time to do it. And fortunately, most people I've been taking pictures of have a career now. And the benefit is that later in life, they actually call me again and then actually have a budget. So it's not just throwing your time out the window. It benefits other people's ambitions and their dream, and sometimes it pays back. The karma carousel hits you in the back of the head, and you actually get something to do. So I kind of enjoy, I can't remember the term. I think it's sharing it forwards or giving it forwards.
Pay. Is it pay?
Yeah, pay it forwards. Yeah, that's true. Pay it forwards, because I think the more you do it, I mean, you shouldn't. I don't do it for people who have money. No. If people have a lot of money, I take my price. But if it's people that just can't do it, then I'll do it for free. And tomorrow I'm helping a young dancer that have nothing. And she needs video for her project to be able to get a job. So I'm helping her to get a job.
This attention to detail you have as well, changing direction now, which I think your martial arts, because I know you're a martial artist, and you've mentioned the music. It's an attention that, and I think those two facets really help people when it comes to attention to detail, because I think you have to be a martial artist and a musician. But this attention to detail has played into the way you make your films, and I wanted to talk about your YouTube films. But most men, sorry to use a real generalization now, Palle, but most men throw the manuals away, but you don't. What is it about the detail? I mean, you even call your YouTube videos geeky stuff.
Yeah, but it's because that's how my brain works. I'm not made from, I'm not built like regular people. I have my brain works in a different way than most people do. I have a crazy memory. I can remember when I was a baby. I can remember since I was a couple of months old, and I can remember it more or less linearly. And it's kind of a weird thing in a big subject. It's sort of like an Asperger's brain that sucks in a lot of information, and it also it's like I can't really I can't not have attention to detail.
The Palle way of working to camera, this sort of very gentle one. If you haven't seen one of Palle's films, you have to. We'll put links in, obviously, in the show notes, because you have this beautiful way of connecting with a camera. I feel safe when I'm in one of your films. I don't feel that, even though I've seen the words geeky stuff, that I'm not going to be able to understand what you're about to say. How did you come about that style of filmmaking? Because it's so different to every other tuitorial kind of video on YouTube, that's for sure.
I think it's because I have been teaching a lot since I was very young, because I acquired information very quickly and ended up teaching very quickly. in everything I did. I did it in martial arts. I've done it in music, and I haven't been taught much music. I taught at 2 conservatories in Denmark, but I never had 1 hour of lessons myself. so it's just, I think I understand that most people they don't connect well with a high amount of information, especially not things they can't relate to. So I thought it was much better to take the approach of showing how you apply certain routines. So when you use your camera, or you use your gadget or tool, then I'm just taking the approaches, because so many people sit down and say, okay, these 10 things are bad, these 10 things are good. It can do this and that, and this is the specs. And why should I do it? Because they do it. So I should do something different. So I just try to sort of get around how you could apply the use of this camera or whatever tool I'm showing in a specific setting. And most often people can relate to it pretty easily.
I'm interested as to why you chose Fujifilm, although I think it has something to do with the way you're treated with big cameras at music festivals.
Yeah, I had a Canon before, and I never really connected to the camera. I have never seen so deep levels of menus in a camera. Even I had a problem getting around the whole thing. And then the X100 came in 2011. And I was sick and tired of being pushed into the photo pit with other photographers had these vests on that glows in the light or glows in the dark. And I hated being that one that had to be pushed in front of the stage and 3 songs and then out. So I chose to go to a big festival when I got the X100 and had a job taking pictures there, but I just went with the X100 and 1 battery. So I had to turn everything off. I only used the optical viewfinder. And then I started taking pictures from the pit. But then some of the musicians noticed me being totally different than the rest of the photographers. And then I was pointed at and asked to come up on stage. So I went up on stage. And from then on, I just went backstage and took a lot of backstage pictures. And then when I noticed what came out of that camera, because I only shot JPEG, I was just totally blown away by the colors and the quality of this little camera. And people posed for me because this little camera didn't scare anyone. It sort of pulled them towards me instead of pushing them away. But whenever they saw one of the Canon photographers with their big lenses, they just turned their back. So I had an advantage because I didn't seem like a photographer.
Well, I'm curious then about your camera bag. I know you love the new X Pro incarnation in the 3. I watched the film in that. I know one of the things you particularly like
is crazy about that camera.
Your nose doesn't mess up the screen anymore at the back. I thought that was
exactly. That was one thing. I just thought it was funny because I'm left-eyed, so I always smear the display with my nose, and then suddenly I didn't. So I was like, hey,
it's exactly the same as me. Yeah, absolutely. If I go to the back of your room now behind you and unzip your kit bag, what am I going to find in there?
You will find an empty bag because I pack it every time for what I'm doing, because I'm as diverse when I do jobs as you have noticed in anything. It can be a couple of days ago, I went for doing a couple of interviews with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practicer, 2 coaches for a new club, and did some filmed some practice routines and some interviews, and also took some pictures. So I brought the X-T4, a 35mm for the portraits, and I brought a 1655 lens with an ND filter for the video. And the new X-T4 is, you can just switch the knob and then you're good to go in anything. I set that up before I went, so I had the settings and just had a little rig around it. And I could put it in the small Fujifilm Dumpke bag.
Yes, I do. Yeah.
It all fitted in there. And then I had a bigger Manfrotto bag with a light stand. I brought a Profoto B1, but I found out that I shouldn't because it has a fan inside, so it makes noise when it starts to get warm. So lights with fans in them are not good for video. I figured out.
Not at all. Coming back to the filming then, I'm talking about your Talking Heads pieces again, which, as I said, are wonderfully simple. What is the Schultz setup? I mean, your skin tones are warm. It's beautifully lit. Is it 4K or what is your? I've often said to Kev, I wonder what.
Try to improve it a little bit.
Right.
All the time. I'm just taking a step up every time I do it to sort of have some sort of development in the look. But I use two LED lights called Falcon Eyes, a small one and a big one, just for my face. And then I basically just go back in the room and turn on the regular indoor lights because they are very warm in comparison to daylight LED. And the last video that hasn't come out yet, I for the first time used a blue LED light to light up part of the background to have separation. And that looked really good.
Well, it's nice to see you back on YouTube, because I know for a while you had other projects that took you away. So we'll make sure we pop up some links for your channel, your work and your projects, and of course your Instagram account, which is where you keep folks up to date with what you're doing, which is at Palle Schultz, at Palle Schultz. And actually, on that note, and to bring things full circle, do you think Stanley Kubrick, with all his creativity, would have had an Instagram account?
I think he would have had a manager take care of it, but I think he would have.
Do you think so?
I think he would have people to do it for him. I think he had such a strong vision of what he was doing and was so focused on what he was doing that I don't think he would have much time, but I think he would appreciate the medium. I'm pretty sure of it.
With his inventiveness, I bet he'd have done something different.
Probably, but I don't think he would put much of his mind into it because film was his thing.
Yeah.
And he would probably just continue making amazing movies because all his movies for me is an artwork in itself. I mean, even The Shining have taken a pounding from some critics, but still to this day, I think it's, as a horror movie, is one that really has, it's very special, and the way it scares people was a new way to scare people. So he definitely had a vision for what he wanted.
I tried to talk Kev into it. I said, Kev, you got this wonderful new projector for your house. I gave him, because The Shining was on the list. He said, I'm not watching The Shining. But I tell you what, though, The Shining, Clockwork Orange, and 2001. If I had, on one hand, if I thought what I call the late night Friday with a tipple of something slightly stronger than a cup of tea, then I think those three films would be on there. I'm not sure what the other two would be, but those three probably, definitely The Shining, without a doubt.
Yeah, I think Full Metal Jacket for me is one of the
of course,
most iconic,
yes.
Because the acting in that film is just spectacular.
Our thanks to Palle Schultz for his time talking to us this week on the FujiCast. Of course, we'll have all the links that you need with regards his work, so you can go and check it out for yourself, and do make sure you pop across and subscribe to his YouTube channel as well. Right, back to your questions. Well, this actually, Kev, this first one's not really a question. This is more a sort of collection of thoughts from friend of the show, Anna McCarthy. Whenever I say the name Anna McCarthy, I always want to go into a jingle, Kev. AnnaMcCarthy.com. I tell you what, that would be something, wouldn't it, if we started having jingles for everybody? That would be a step too far, maybe. Anyway, she wrote a couple of weeks back about getting back out into the wider world to make portraits. Such is the speed of what is and isn't allowed. So some of the original mail is perhaps not so relevant, so I've kind of tried to edit this on the go, really. But I want to summarise some of her thoughts, Kevin, see what you think. Some of the things was, I suppose, positives and negatives and feedback to getting back out there photographing again. And if you're listening and you've had similar experiences, would be chuffed to bits to get some feedback to click at fujicast.co.uk. So here we go. Things that she's found. Number one, I've rediscovered my 70 to 200 lens, so in our case, a 50 to 140. So, good thing, I realised how lovely a longer lens is, compressed perspective, and the shallow depth of field it affords at f4. And of course, Kev, social distancing, it's a great lens for that, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, I mean, are you planning on using, when you get back out in the wider world, something like a 50 to 140?
No.
No?
Honestly, I think that when when we're allowed to shoot weddings again, I think it would be when they're back to normal.
Right. Okay.
Unless they're going to be small weddings, 10 people or so. So I'm guessing that when I'm back out shooting weddings properly, then they will be basically as they were before.
Well, Anna's doing a lot of work at the moment in terms of portrait work. So she suggested as well, if you're planning to do, I think she's doing a lot of remote portrait sessions. If you're planning to do these sessions at the moment, I strongly suggest organising it out of hours toward the start or the end of the day. I was lucky with this one. The weather was sunny and we started at 7 p.m. Fewer folk around is best. At the best times, but in the evenings are definitely now. Anyway, challenges. My client wasn't relaxed about being photographed. Nothing new, not many people are to start with, but she was a lot more lax than me in keeping to the social distancing. As we walked along, every now and then I had to keep reminding her not to walk too close to me for her own benefit and I suppose both our safeties. And I kept having to veer away. I wonder, Kev, how that's going to work with relationship building, because you do when veering away from people. Well, have I got the plague? It's difficult, isn't it?
Well, it is, because some people do seem to take umbrage to it, don't they? That you by you distancing from them, somehow they kind of think that you think they're unclean.
Yeah.
And of course they're not. It could be you. Well, it doesn't matter who it is, but yeah, it's the way it is, isn't it? It's very peculiar, I have to say, very peculiar.
Very different. Of course, if we have to go back into weddings, I know you keep saying to me that it's going to be different by the time we get back into weddings, but I think we'll be going back into weddings sooner than you think. I know we've always disagreed on that, but I think there's going to be social distancing. And now, obviously, Anna's talking about being out there as a portrait shooter, but a lot of this works in lots of cross genre.
I think weddings will start again pretty soon, but I just don't think that they're going to be the kind of close combat stuff that we're used to. And I think that if people who weddings will be maybe 30 people or something perhaps, and those weddings will go ahead, then fine. I don't know, but I really hope I'm wrong. I absolutely really hope I'm wrong.
Okay, and then there were lots of points, but these are the ones I drew out what I think were the three most salient ones that are still relevant. Often I'll show my more nervous clients a picture on the back of my camera. Once I've got one I'm happy with in the bag toward the start of the session, it almost always surprises them and gives them confidence, and they start to properly relax and even enjoy it. If you've got long arms and can stand on one leg with a long lens and reach out, you can just about do this at 2 meters, but it's not easy. And I was pushing it a bit to do so. And she also mentioned the masks thing. So, masks, Kev, will you wear one to weddings?
If I have to, yes. Yeah. If that's the requirement, of course I will. I think currently the directive is that you have to wear them on public transport in London.
Yes.
I think that's it right now. But that may change, of course. Yeah, if they say you've got to wear one, then I'll wear one. I mean, I suppose the problem for the government is if they say to everybody you have to wear a mask when you're outside, then they have to supply a mask to everybody.
Yes.
And they can't do that. Can't even supply them to the NHS. So
have you bought some, by the way?
No, we made some.
Did you? Okay. Oh, so you have got some?
Yeah. I mean, how effective they are, I have no idea. But they've been made. So yeah, we have some. Our next door neighbour made some with dog bones on. They look very cute.
Dog bones.
Threw them over the garden to us.
You could have them in your rugby colours, couldn't you? What are your rugby colours from your last team?
I always said to Gemma, I think I fancy having one made with nice white teeth on that looks like I'm smiling all the time.
Oh, did you see the ones? They were on the BBC. They were on the BBC, actually. Somebody had put a load of LEDs in the actual mask so that it actually mirrored the movement of your mouth as you were talking.
I mean,
frightening.
I feel a bit disingenuous making light of it because one of the things that I'm conscious of is that there seems to be a lot of people who are seeing these things as a fashion accessory rather than the seriousness of it.
Yeah.
And we've seen a lot of that on Instagram, haven't we? The influencers with their fashion accessory mask.
Yes.
I'm like, you know what? It's not going to stop you getting anything, and it's not going to stop you passing it on. You're doing that because you want the thumbs up, the likes.
Anyway, thank you, Anna, for that, because there are some interesting points, and maybe I'm throwing these in here because it's not like a regular question that we field, just in case you've got some thoughts that you can send in to click@fujicast.co.uk, or very quickly, mention the Insta for her as well, Anna McCarthy Photography, @Anna McCarthy Photography. Done. There we go.
AnnaMcCarthyPhotography.com.
And there we go. And you got a freshly sung jingle by Kev as well. Go on, your turn.
Okay, I have a question, and this is from somebody called Christine Summerfield.
Right.
And it's quite a weird question, really. It says, "Hi Kevin and Neil, love the podcast. Yada 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 yada."
Yes.
I have a question probably for Kevin rather than Neil. And she says, if Sony come to you and offered you money plus all the gear you could handle to switch to them, would you do it? And the second part there we go. The second part of the question is that I know you and some other photographers are involved in the design of Fujifilm cameras. Some of the other photographers seem to use that as a badge of honor. Just careful of what I'm reading now, and make everybody fully aware of it. However, you only seem to casually mention it rather than show off about it. I suppose I'm interested in what you actually do at that stage of the design, how much you're involved, and what do you get out of it.
All right. Well, let's take both those questions. First of all, then, let's go for the if Sony were to come to you question. And or you know, other brands exist, don't they? And say, Mr. Mullins, here's a bag load of kit. Come and join us.
No, I've always said to my friends at Fujifilm that if something comes along technology-wise that I feel is better for my clients, then I will change. Just there isn't anything that I can see that is like that. And of course, that change has to involve the financial element of selling gear and part exchange, and you know, and it has to be a dramatically better shooting experience. You know, maybe it's going to be even lighter and smaller, faster, whatever. I don't know. But no, there's nothing in the Sony range that tempts me right now, and or the Nikon range or anything else. So the answer is no. Although the money bit is a bit of a tricky question to answer, because you know, I'm not going to sit here and say, look, if somebody came along and said, we'll pay your mortgage off if you went on Instagram and said you're using something like that, would you do it? Oh God, I'd be straight on the phone to Fuji and say, listen, I have this, I have a little bit of a problem.
Hang on. Oh, phone's always across the table. Hold on. Hello? Yeah. Well, I'll ask. I've no idea what he'll say. It's Mr. Leica, and he says you can have everything, bag thrown in, 30k a year. That's unfair. I'm sorry, I'll answer on your behalf. He says no, he's not interested.
I can tell you right now that I could never. The problem with all the Leica gear, as much as it is beautiful,
it is.
As I would love a Leica at some point in my life, I wouldn't be able to do the work for my clients with it, because I'm just not that skilled. So that would definitely be a no.
Kev, you are skilled. It's just you'd have to develop a different way of working. That's all.
Ultimately, it comes down to there is nobody on this planet that would say no if somebody said, you know what, this is literally an offer you cannot refuse. But I would always be honest about it and open. That's the difference.
Joking apart though, Kev, you have been without a doubt not just loyal to the brand, but you were there right from the start. And you know, when you were originally approached, it was because you believed in a product. It wasn't because you'd picked up a product and thought, hang on, here we go, let's become an ambassador, which has become the currency for a reasonable amount of photographers, hasn't it?
Yeah, it definitely has been. And I think that seems to be a little less now. I think once people understood that actually it's quite hard work, and you don't just get bucket loads of free stuff. No. So it became less appealing to some people. But yeah, there was a thing. I mean, I don't get it so much these days, but the emails and stuff I used to get, how do you become an ambassador? What do I need to do? Yeah. And I always used to say to them, well, work hard. Yeah. And like, work hard? What do you mean work hard? I don't want to work hard. I want to take as many corner cutting opportunities as possible.
I want it now.
Yeah, I want it now without putting any effort in.
Yeah.
So that kind of answers the second part of that question, I suppose. What do we do when we get involved in that stuff? And the fact is, it's pretty infrequent. It's not like every single camera they design, we were involved in it, and a lot of it is still very secretive even until release date. So occasionally we will go to meetings, and mostly it's about feedback. To be honest with you, It's more about listen, you've got your ears to the ground. What do you think people really need in the next generation of cameras? Do these buttons need to be here? Should that be there? And so we have had some physical input for sure in terms of some of the design, like the ergonomics and things like that specifically. But it's still all done by them ultimately.
It must be quite thrilling, actually, because I know there's a few things on a couple of camera bodies that are there because the Mullins had some input and some suggestions. It must be very thrilling to watch it, come out as an actual commercial body.
Yeah, and also there's some things that I've fought for that have been taken away, and at the end of the day, it's for the good of the marketplace rather than just for the good of one person. So yeah, it is interesting to be involved for sure. And the good thing about Fujifilm, as I think is true of pretty much all Japanese culture-based companies, is that it's done on trust.
Yes.
It's not. Yes, you sign an NDA when you become an ambassador, but it's not a. They trust you. They trust you implicitly, and that's the important thing.
I think
So
one of the other things that people don't realise, and you touched on it a moment ago, is you still have to buy kit. I mean, and this is a good time to mention, since we did say we'd mention it in the second half, you have now got the Fujifilm X100V.
I have. I'm just stretching over my.
And you had to part with a few pennies for it, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, no, I had to buy it. Of course I did, and I even got, believe it or not, I got a case.
Yeah.
One of these little leather cases.
Well, you're just going to throw that away. You know what you're like with cases and dividers and stuff.
I realised that I didn't that bit. So I love it. I actually do like it. I haven't really shot with it much yet. It only came on Monday, and I've been a bit busy this week. But I tell you what, one thing and I know this goes back to this meeting idea. When we were kind of involved in the X100V stuff, the view mode button has gone. It's no longer there. You have to assign it to a function button.
I don't know whose idea it was not to have that button on the back.
Well, I mean, it makes sense once you get used to it, and you can have it on a function button and you can configure it. But the way I used to like it was I'd switch it off completely, LCD and everything, and just have the EVF, and then I would switch it back on quickly to review images on the back if need be. And then switch it off, and it was just quicker using that button. So it's just something that will come to me, and also the D-pad's missing now, of course, which I knew would happen, and that's the norm in the later kind of ranges of the rangefinder style cameras. That doesn't bother me at all. I actually, because I haven't really seen this since we saw the prototype. Last time I saw the prototype was when we were in Dubai, and that was I don't know what, like well over a year ago, I think. Yeah. And we talked about the tilt-in screen and everything. They've done such a superb job of that. I haven't actually brought the tilt-in screen out because it's so flush with the body. You might as well not know it's there. So those people who want it can use it, and those people that don't, it's just like it was on the X100F. They've done a superb styling job of that.
What are you going to do with the X100F? Are you going to see that one off now?
No, I can't get rid of my X100s, any of them. Right. But I did say to Albie the other day, because the camera I got busted on Instagram. The camera turned up in a box, and Albie said, "What's that, Dad?" I said, I'm not sure. I think it's something from Fujifilm. Don't know what it is. And
hang on a minute. Are you telling me that the lovely Gemma had no idea this was arriving?
No, and then of course I popped a picture of it up on Instagram, as you do, because that's the way you get the most likes on Instagram, is stick a picture of a camera up.
Yes.
And and sure enough, and I'm going to my Instagram now, and then she waded in, because now of course Gemma's on Instagram, which is the only social media she's on.
Oh, is she? Right. Okay.
And,
are we allowed to know her Instagram name, or is she wanting to remain fairly anonymous?
I'm not sure, really. I would have to run that past her. Yeah. However, if you go to my Instagram page, you'll find it anyway. Because it says, Kev, we've got no money, right? Yeah. So this morning when Albie said, "What's that parcel, Dad?" and you said, "Oh, I don't know, son."
Oh, dear. Oh.
It was next month's mortgage money, Mullins.
Mullins! I can almost hear the shout right now.
So I got proper busted.
Did you? Okay. Well, I just about got away with buying another camera bag. You know what I'm like with buying camera bags, but that was like a little 25 quid special. But you went proper in. You did.
I know, but I couldn't. I shouldn't have bought it. I have to say, it was not the right time, and I have no need for it. But part of me is like, you were involved. Going back to Christine's question, I was involved in it, and loads of other people have got it, and I'm like, I need to be able to. I want to do a YouTube video about it. I want to use it, of course. Yeah. And I said to Albie, do you want this camera, my X100F, which is fairly special because it's one of the ones that we had our names are on them. He said, which they don't do that any longer, by the way. But he said, why are you giving me this, Dad? I said, well, you can use it. I'll put a strap on it and everything so you don't drop it because it's fairly special. He said, nah, it's all right. He said, can I have some Xbox tokens instead?
God. Oh, dear. Well, there we go. Well done for getting one. I'm sorry you got busted about it. And the fact that you don't need one, and you've bought it anyway, you definitely have got gas.
I know. It's the first case of it. This is the first camera, definitely, that I feel like I've bought.
Along with the two GFXs that you bought, you mean?
No, I bought them. I sold them. I bought them and sold. Well, no, I sold one of them, but I've got the other one now. But I've got them for a reason. I feel like you're picking on me.
No, not at all. I do want to make a YouTube video on an X100V myself. So when you've made yours, can you just sling your camera over here and I'll make it without having to buy the camera? No. Oh dear. Right. Okay. Gordon, we got time for one more, I think. Gordon Price. On getting back to work, you may have mentioned this on the dailies, chaps, but what's your thoughts on giving your time for free to camera clubs and organisations? I work as a landscape photographer and fine art restorer, so I kind of fit in with the camera club scene well, but it's taking more of my time than I planned. Obviously not at the moment, I think. So what do you think? How much free work should you do?
Well, it's interesting because I have had a few camera clubs come to me during the lockdown, and I used to do a lot of camera club talks. And at the beginning, I used to, because camera clubs typically aren't for profit, so they are, they obviously charge because they need to hire the venue and all that kind of stuff. So I used to feel very uncomfortable about charging for them. So I would say to them, look, cover my mileage and then just do a collection on the day and donate it to a charity of your choice. And that worked really well for a period of time. And then, of course, I found that I was going further and further afield, and sometimes it was like an overnight stay and everything. So I started putting a fixed fee on it, which is fine. Mostly it's a really low price for a couple of hours. And most of them were okay. Some of them said, we can't afford it and stuff, and that's fine. So I didn't do it. But then what I found this year during the COVID stuff is I was getting emails from, some relatively big companies and brands and things like that saying, and can you do a webinar for us? And I was like, yeah. Here's my fee. Oh, well, we don't have a budget. And so my answer is no then. Anybody who basically is going to be making money from me needs to pay me. Right. That's the way it works in my mind. I have done stuff for free, obviously, for things like the camera clubs and stuff where it's not a money making thing, but ultimately it's now it's like we don't have any money at the moment because nobody's buying our stuff. Well, I don't have any money either at the moment because no one's buying my stuff, and you're not paying me for you not buying your customers, not buying your stuff either. So
it sounds to me as well that Gordon Price has had exactly that that experience. He's been doing, I guess, he's been doing Zoom calls and stuff like that, because I know some camera clubs have carried on doing their meetings, haven't they? Only on Zoom, which is
which is great.
It's great, yeah. Yeah.
The way I think is I often feel bad when I say no to things like that because, well, I used to feel bad and now I don't, because I feel like I do enough, like we're doing the doorstep stuff here and that's all entirely, we've raised quite a bit of money for the food bank. And so in my mind, I feel like I don't need to feel bad. Yeah. And I definitely don't feel bad for the companies who are commercial companies making money and are unwilling to pay. There we go. I'm going to get off my...
Step down, Mullins. Ali Stewart sent in a couple. I know I said that was the last, but we got just literally a minute. Ali Stewart sent in some Tech Free Tuesday questions. We haven't done any over the last couple of weeks. Do you want to end on a couple of those?
Yeah, let's do it.
Lockdown's over, and you're allowed to go both out and play again. The two of you are going by train to London for the day. What's your ideal itinerary for a day out in London together? You can come home on the last train.
Oh, well, we'd start with Weatherspoons for breakfast.
Yeah, just obviously just a little tour of them to check they're all okay. And
yeah. Make sure it's all going well.
Yeah, that's it.
Then perhaps we take in a couple of maybe exhibition or something that's near a pub.
Oh, I thought you were about to say that we're taking a couple of O'Neills then as well.
Yeah. Well, no, O'Neill's is where we'd go for 11s.
Okay, all right.
I feel like we'll be there by about 11.
I'll tell you what, I can't wait to go to the Tate. That's where I want to go. I want to go to the Tate and spend a whole day walking around it.
Yeah, I miss that place, I have to say.
Yeah.
And actually, you know what I'm going to do when they're allowed to? I'm going to go to a zoo. I feel like they're struggling, and they allowed nail bars to open before they allowed zoos to open.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah, a nail bar to open before a zoo. Really?
Yeah, essentials. Nail bars were classed as essential shops.
Nail bars. Now I know I'm unlikely to have my nails done. I appreciate that, everybody, but really, before a dentist? Although I don't understand why dentists weren't open.
Yeah, nail bars were open, and then poor zoos were like, "Hang on, we're going to have to start shooting our elephants soon."
I read that, and yeah. Oh no.
And a zoo is one of the easiest places to socially distance.
Yeah, it is.
All you've got to do is poke one of those lions in the bum with a stick, and it will roar, and everybody will run in different directions.
Kev, you can never get that close. I don't know what kind of zoos you go to, right?
I'm going to take the kids to the zoo. That's what I'm going to do. I don't know which one, but one of the ones that I feel has had it hard.
Whatever one is closer to an O'Neill's.
Yeah.
You'll like this one, actually, Kev. You have one frame left that you can shoot, and then you can never ever pick up a camera again because you're going to go and do something else with your life. What will you shoot? That's a really inventive question. I like that one.
Good Lord.
I tell you what, with your X100V, no wonder you were in so much trouble. Not only did you buy, by the way, a camera that Gemma was quite surprised by, you didn't even make her the first picture. There's always a family picture. It's the first thing you make with your camera. You took a picture of Git.
Yeah, I did. He's lying here right next to me once again.
Go the Git. So go on then. What's the? I've got one frame left that you can shoot. Oh dear. I mean, it's just going to be, for me, it's going to be a simple family one.
I don't know. See, because I feel like I've got enough of them. I think I would have to go. It depends on how long you've got to do the frame and all that kind of stuff. But I think I'd try and find. What I'd like to do is, and I've often thought this, is find the 20 most important people in my life.
Right. It's one frame, not 20, one frame.
Yeah, but put them all in one picture. So
that sounds like, sorry, Mullins, but that sounds like a bit of a group shot to me.
Yeah. Oh, no, absolutely. I'm thinking like proper people as well. I'm thinking like Bill Gates would be in there. I'd ask him for my $5 back. I'd have there'd be a couple of my rugby mates would be in there.
Stinky Jeff,
things like that.
Stinky Jeff, or what are all the names?
It's not Stinky Jeff. It's Lazy Jeff.
Lazy Jeff. Sorry, not Stinky Jeff. I'll be in trouble because I think he listens. So,
no, that's Big Nick. Big Nick listens. DIY Dave listens.
DIY Dave. Well, Gemma obviously and the kids would be in it as well, wouldn't they?
No, I've got loads of them.
All right. So they're not even invited in this final frame that you take in your
no, it would have to be normal family people. Right, yeah, okay. I've always thought if I had the opportunity to do a book and it was like a no limits, no bars limit, I would travel the world finding the people, not so much the most important, but perhaps the people who had the biggest impact on my life.
Wow. That's like a little history project. That'd be amazing, wouldn't it?
Quite a lot of them are dead, though. So.
Oh, are they? Oh, right, okay. Well, we ended on nice...
Their graves. I'd find their graves and include those. Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah.
It's well off target from Ali's question, sorry.
Yeah, well, it was interesting, though. Thank you very much for your questions this week. They are, here we go, stand by, the lifeblood of the show. So please keep sending them in. We're building up a nice collection again, which is fantastic. Send them to click@fujicast.co.uk. Usually at this stage, Kev, I say, what are you up to this week? What are you up to this week? Oh, I suppose, actually, you're going to be moving your office, aren't you?
Possibly, yeah, probably. Yeah, I'm sad. I don't want to do it. I don't want to go back to the scary world.
Okay, well, we'll send your questions in and we'll catch up next week. Oh, don't forget to go to fujicast.co.uk for all the links of all the things that you've heard on the show today, and we'll catch up next week. You never know, Kev. One of these shows we're actually going to be in the same room together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel it might be the next one.
Do you think so? Do you think so? It's getting close. All right. Well, maybe see you next week, and you can steal my coffee again. See you then.
Bye-bye.
The Fujicast is an independent Loading Zone production. Email the show with your questions and words of wisdom to click@fujicast.co.uk. Email any complaints and political nonsense to our wives, who will deal with your comments in their own good time and in their own good way.